Calvin to the stage, please. Brother Calvin.
Master's man, our mission statement. Our mission statement is to lead man to Christ and discipline them towards maturity in Christ so that they develop spiritually and become leaders in their sphere of influence. Our mission statement is simply to focus and to seek to inspire or whatever that challenge may be. Here at Master's Men, we stand willing and ready to guide you through any difficult circumstances. So this is what we do here, and we are happy that you all have come on out to participate in this morning's session by your presence here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brother Calvin. So, it's about that time when we invite the guest speaker to make his formal presentation. And by the way, in case you're wondering, yeah, I'm sure some of you, if you haven't asked a question, you can ask it very shortly. Where's the food? No? I mean, that is no, we don't have to feed you if we don't have to. I mean, you don't want to just let us know. I mean,
you see, the Lord Jesus told his disciples when they came back, I have meat to eat that you know not of.
okay. The brother's going to throw scripture at me this morning. I can take that one. But the food is being prepared, as Brother Dominic said. We have Deacon Singh. Deacon Singh is our in-house chef. Notice I didn't use the word cook. He's our in-house chef, so he is hard at work, making sure that you get your breakfast this morning. Now, we ain't giving you a whole bowl of whatever it is, or feed you till next week. The main purpose is to feed you education. You can get your full of that this morning, but we can give you something to eat. So, when you get the food, just remember the prayer, part of the prayer. The food is to help you and do your body good. So, don't look next door to see what the other man got and see if he get a bit more than you. Right? And don't look and say, well, how come he get and I ain't get? Just look at what you have in front of you. Come on, guys. Just look at what you have in front of you and be thankful. Can we all say thankful? So, say, I am thankful. See the louder. I am thankful. So, just remember those words. Don't look in Brother Glass' plate and say, well, how come Brother Glass got a bigger piece than me? And how come this one get that and I didn't get this? You ever heard of Murphy's Law? Yeah. Murphy has several laws. And you know the law that says anything that could go wrong will go wrong. And usually at the worst possible times. But you know something? Give our brothers a round of applause for me, please. Because, and I'll tell you why. Give them a round of applause. Because these brothers, now I don't know all of their background, their particular background, professionally, all of them in detail. But when you talk about improvisation and able to think quickly on their feet and make quick, sound decisions, trust me. Who was that guy over there? These brothers were able to make quick, sound decisions because one of Murphy's laws, the one that says anything that could go wrong will go wrong, they were able to make some very quick adjustments, standing on their feet this morning. And you know, I had to give it off to all of them. So we were able to pull this together because some things went wrong in the background. I'm not going to get into detail, but at least we were able to come together, make some quick decisions, and this is going to come off successfully. So thank you all very much. So, Brother Kendall, did you have your cup of tea yet, sir? Okay, that's all right. You didn't have your tea yet. Let me say it again. Brother Kendall.
Yes, sir.
Did you have your cup of tea yet, sir?
No, sir.
Okay.
3 cups already, sir.
Not you.
But I stuck behind the tea, so.
You have it in the tea. So in other words, he made sure all the brothers are straight. He can't get back home. All right, Brother Kendall, please come and introduce our guest speaker this morning. Invite Brother Kendall, please.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's good to see you all you guys here. Captain Prescott Smith is a professional fly fisherman, instructor, Lord Journal, who has devoted his life to fostering the conservation of the Bahamian natural environment. Prescott comes from a family of professional fly fishermen. His father, Charlie Smith, pioneered the one fishing fly, what they call Crazy Charlie. Prescott has been in the fly fishing industry. Prescott has seen the fly fishing industry evolve in the Bahamas, spending most of his time in the marine environment. Fly fishing for Prescott started with working at his father's lodge at a very young age, then continuing to guide for several other Bahamian fishing lodges. In 1998, after employment with the Bahamas Defense Force as a mechanical engineer, Prescott built his own lodge, the Stafford Creek Bonefish Lodge on Andros Island, where he resides and owned, and also the head guide. Prescott is a marine mechanical engineer, a master A captain, certified scuba instructor, certified FFF casting instructor, and a master instructor to fly fishing and at Daytona University. Since 1994, he has been a master instructor for the National Guides Certification Program in the Bahamas. He teaches fly casting, the flats, and the environment, and bonefish biology. He's co-founder and president of the Bahamas Sport Fishing and Conservation Association, a grassroots organization promoting the conservation of marine habitat, marine life, sustainable fisheries, and the empowerment of Bahamians and conservation. In 2004, he acted as a consultant to the Ministry of Tourism in the British Virgin Islands, where he taught courses in flats, environment, and fly casting. In 2011, the Bahamian government recognized the Bahamas Fly Fishing Industry Association as a national association to develop fly fishing as a sustainable industry in the Bahamas. Prescott Smith is the founding board member of the BFFIA and its current president, as well as the director of the Bahamas Natural Resources Foundation. Prescott's passion are the protection and conservation of the Bahamian natural fishing resources and promoting Bahamian empowerment through use of the natural resources to earn a sustainable living. In his downtime, Prescott explores the remote parts of Andros in search of the next catch and enjoys bird watching, farming, and reading. That's what he gives me. Let me tell you what I personally know of Prescott. I met Prescott approximately about 17 years ago in Athens. I actually met Prescott in Athens. My family owned and operated a bonefish lodge in Athens, also the Club Race Point Bonefish Inn. And Prescott had some, yes, if you know much about fly fishing, normally it's a high-end sport. And because of the equipment to go fly fishing, it isn't $100. A typical rod would cost you roughly around $2,000. So Kendall would need to spend $2,000 on a fly rod. He had some guests who wanted to explore Auckland, and they said, listen here, we don't know anyone in Auckland, so if you go with us, we go. If not, we ain't going. He came down, I was in Auckland the same time, and the rest is history. We hit it off from then. I visited Andres several times. And I can truly say he's a true friend. A true friend. When I was going through my ordeal, you know, you'll have folks who talk to you, then you'll have folks who know the struggle you're going through, and they just, hey, take this here, or hey, I put something on your account. Then you have some other friends, hey, you need anything? They're expecting you as a man, you know, we go in and tell you, yay, or nay. But I can say he's a true friend. And really for a time, I've known Prescott for the past 17, 18 years. He spent all his downtime researching our resources. He spent all his downtime. He can tell you a lot of folks who he has fished internationally, some of the astronauts, some of the presidents of this world, and who enlighten him in terms of our resources. Because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our country, and I can tell you that I know that a lot of y'all don't know. But again, I'm not here to speak. He's a speaker. But since he's taking the last bite on his chicken, let me just sidebar. Early last week, me and him was down in Long Island, Conception Island. I was down there to do a site inspection for a cruise ship. And first time in Conception Island, first time in Long Island, Mr. Gordon. This is my first time I've actually found an island almost as beautiful as Auckland. Almost. But Conception Island, I must say, beautiful island. Long Island, beautiful. I did not know Conception Island was a national park, to be honest with you. I had it before some foreigners from Germany told me they were going to take a cruise ship there. I didn't even know where Conception Island was. I heard about it when I was in high school some time ago. I didn't know where it was. I had to go to the map. Anyway, I had to get the boat from Long Island over to Conception Island. Me and him was together. And again, Conception Island, miles of untouched beach. I left my footprint on the beach. There are creeks where it's a no-go area because of green turtles. I didn't know that was one of the biggest concentrations of green turtles in the Bahamas. I didn't know that. I thought it was islands. On the eastern side of Conception Island, there are some rocks where the migratory birds move from south north. I didn't know that. So again, we have all this stuff right now in our backyard, and we don't know. I'll be honest with you, I just landed on Monday, Tuesday, this week. So please put down together and let's listen to the information that's going to be provided. And again, you're going to have a chance to ask any question afterwards. And again, we didn't politicize name, let me repeat that, we didn't politicize name, and we're just here to give the information. We're only here to provide the information and the facts, and how does it go? You decide. So please, let's stand and put down together Captain Prescott.
Sorry, Ken. Okay, so 1 second. If you got, a pig feet in front of you, or there's a particular breast side that you do not want, just motion to one brothers, and then they'll swap it up for you. We do apologize for everyone, there's the pig feet. But if there's something that you don't want, just motion to one of the brothers and they'll swap it for you. Now, we can't guarantee you'll get what you want, but they'll swap it for you. Thanks, Ken.
People still eat pig feet. Good morning to you all. Good morning. Well, let me say right up front, right? It's actually a privilege for me to be here, to be given the opportunity to speak to you. And as I've done this for so many years, my attitude is I'm a student at day one in the class. There's so much we can learn from each other. My father taught me, he said, well, Prescott, he said, it takes 2 lifetimes to learn this, and you've only got one. And so
that instilled an attitude in me that we're always learning, and we can learn from a 10-year-old child. So I want to give you a bit of background how I got into this. That's important for you to know. I had my personal goals in the Defense Force. I see one of my colleagues here. I joined the Defense Force growing up on the sea, and I wanted to fly jet planes. I had my pilot kit from I was 12 years old, and I could look up and tell what kind of planes, was flying over. Really passionate about it. But during my time in Defense Force, I tried to save as much as I can to go to college to fly. But you might have one plan. The Creator has a different purpose for your life. So as I travel around the country, I noticed that I would see so much things that we were not taught in our education system about the Bahamas. And so, like a colleague of mine here, we would go to Ocean Key, we would go to other parts of the country, and we would be amazed of the things that we were seeing out there that we just had no idea about. But I still didn't connect those dots. When I left the Defense Force, I enrolled in American Flyers College, and that only lasted for a very brief time. One of my brothers, who has a fishing lodge as well, he said, Prescott, we needed to spread fly fishing around the Bahamas to get other Bahamians involved in it, because you were going to lose the industry. And I was used to following orders. That's one thing we learned very well in Defense Force. When somebody tell you to go make them the tea, you didn't moan about it, you went and did it. So I put the flying thing on hold, and I got into trying to see how you can address the issues with getting the government to get other Bahamians involved in an industry that had so much potential, of which I learned years later we didn't scratch the surface. But when I approached the government, it was confusing to me that we were getting a lot of mixed signals. I think we're talking about Bahamians being owners in the tourism industry. Why wasn't we getting the support? So I ended up fishing this gentleman from England, the Duke of Wellington, and he said, Prescott, I want to donate £500,000 to getting yours protected. I was polling him in one of the creeks in Andros. And I said, well, what do I do with £500,000? I don't know nothing about this conservation. So I called the National Trust, and the Duke called me back and he said, Prescott, he said, something is not right here. He said, they want me to donate the monies to the general fund. He said, I need you to find out who these board members are, okay? Well, I remember as I traveled throughout the country, that people on the different islands were saying how their land was being taken from them, and they would be calling certain names. I don't know who those individuals were. It's important that I share the story so that you would understand how I got on this track. When I started researching more and more, the Duke called me back and he said he wasn't going to donate the monies anymore. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. You're talking about empowering Bahamians, yet instead of getting support, it's being met with roadblocks. So then I started doing research. I said, well, who else are experiencing this in other parts of the world? The first country I started researching was in Kenya. And there was a lady named Wangari Maathai who, along with a group of women, they wanted to plant 1 million trees but they were getting a lot of opposition trying to drive them off the land because of the minerals beneath the land. And so a lot of times you hear of civil wars and this and that. A lot of people don't realize it's always about the resources. But then I went to Australia researching other countries, and I noticed that persons were going through a similar experience as I was having in the Bahamas. And because I naturally, that military was in me, that, you know, we just don't quit. I had to keep digging what was to the bottom of this. So now, I go back 28 years of research plus in natural resources all over the world. So I know many persons hear about this, you know, the aragonite and calcium, but it is important that I share a story to you so you would understand. For me, the human component of this was always front and center. How does this impact our citizens in their daily lives? How did we end up in the predicament that we're in, not just here in the Bahamas? And so you will see beyond, and I will state this up front, the Bahamas is the richest country on the face of the earth based on its population versus its natural resources. Okay? Now people can just make these statements, but you got to be able to back them up. I will show you it. So the information, sharing that with you, I can say it in the front of the United Nations, and no one would be able to challenge it, except most people don't want you to know that, right? Again, the Bahamas is the richest country on the face of the earth based on its population and the amount of natural resources that the country has. So here is an important starting point for us here. We all can see the Bahamas at this juncture here. So you see the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, and then you can see South America, and you come around and you can see Africa. It's important when you make these statements, you need to back it up. So all of that green area there, that's the great forest area called the Congo. And of course, you know that's the Sahara Desert. So 90% of the living things on Earth falls between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Africa is the largest landmass within that belt, which means most of the wealth of the world are within that zone. Okay? That's important for you to know, because for me as a child, I was wondering, why did we end up in slavery? It didn't just happen to us. The British did it to the Irish. Didn't matter what pigmentation you were, but why was the Africans a global target all over the world? And that's because most of the world's resources are within that zone. So we ended up not just in the Caribbean, in Brazil, whether you were mining the gold, cutting the hardwoods, but it was about getting in Africa. Now, why would I start this presentation with flamingos? I went to cabinet 15 years ago. Again, persons might appear, this Prescott going around talking about resources, but you're going to get the whole background as to how this relates to our children and their future. I tried for 10 years to get to the government and was blocked. Many death threats, bribes. I never gave in to any of it. And then 15 years ago, I got an opportunity to go to cabinet. I figured I'd hit a home run. Now the information is going to get out to all our citizens and so forth. So I went there for 4.5 hours, and then I was invited back for 3+ hours, and the pressure just kept building. Attorneys would show up on my law's site. This one wanted to offer you this deal. And I realized it wasn't just by accident that our citizens were not aware of so many things that I wasn't aware of. So why would I put flamingos here? When I went to cabinet, some of my clients, as Kendall mentioned, one was the CEO of Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble that went with me to Acklands. And they said, well, Prescott, you're not going to get the prime minister's and the minister's attention for no more than 15, 20 minutes. And I knew the stereotypes. They say, well, he's a fisherman, less educated, this island boy. What could he come in here to tell us, right? So when I put up the flamingos, I asked them, which island? Everyone in the room said Inagua. Yet this is the west coast of Andros. And the point I was making about that is it sets the tone, as I said to you, that I can learn something from every one of you in this room that I don't know. And so open our minds to learn new things, that if this is the west coast of Andros, how come our students are only told about Inagua? And then I found out one of those families have 5,000 acres of land on the west coast of Andros, and it was not in your interest to know that those flamingos were there. But they're also in Mayawana, and Crooked Island, and Acklands, and Long Key, and Long Island. So why are you not told? And then you find out that many of these have lots of beautiful beaches and real estate and prime this, that this would be a conflict of interest of you knowing the true wealth of your country. You see? So the root of our problem in the Bahamas, we have to go to it if we're going to solve it. We can just look at the symptoms. We look at the young men in Foxhill, people losing their homes. And I will say this again, every citizen on Grand Bahama is a millionaire based on the wealth that you have here. And you'll see it, but you'll see why we are going through this. We have to go to where it started for us. So you have these countries met in Germany because of what I showed you where most of the wealth of the world is. And they decided that we needed to carve up Africa in order to get control of where most of the resources on earth exist. Yes, I do have audio. And this shows you a whole history. And it's important for you to know this history, because for me to just come here and just talk and show you all of this wealth, it's about you learning how to navigate so that when you see things, you can see it for what it really is and not be misled with false information. want to say quick before I continue. This impacts exactly how your daily life is spiritually. And so when you hear about resources, there really is no separation. A lot of people don't understand, but why when we were being boarded on the slave ships, there was the cross there or on the plantation, and you would see how it impacts us in our daily life right now. For the sake of time, I'm going to try to speed it up a bit. And you're looking at 10 going into 11 plus. You can see the year rotating here. As persons up in the north of Africa, they always saw all of these resources coming from Africa, but a lot of them didn't know the source of it. And so you had the Arabs would be like what we call the middleman trading. And of course, as Europeans tried to penetrate the continent, come in as missionaries, we're going to help do some this and that, and they scout the land around. It didn't happen overnight. And that's what you see happening in our country, didn't happen overnight. You can see the progression going in the wrong direction, but as you will see, it didn't just start. Just 1 second here. As you would see, you have France, you have England. In the 6th, they have already entered the continent of Africa. The Dutch originally started down there. Twelve of those countries met in 1884 in Germany, including the United States of America. And you notice that's 1876. So you can pay attention to what happened to Africa after 1884. Now what is interesting about this, we see our Haitian brothers and sisters coming across, and what is happening to them is no different than what is happening to you here. This is France, all that area, and this is the British. One thing you will learn is who controls your port, controls your economy, who controls the natural resources. And so the British knew that they had to take control of Egypt, of which today what is happening, as you'll see in Grand Bahama, you see many ships. They come and go, but the resources are coming out of Africa through Egypt. Now what France did was, even though the same time we got political independence, many of those countries got political independence, but they maintained control of the resources beneath the earth. So even if you wanted to mine the gold, the copper, the diamond, it would be a French company. So what is happening in Haiti, you might have political independence, but you never get control of your resources. the deception takes place for us. So you say in the Bahamas you got majority rule in 67. If you notice, the same time they were transferring political independence, colonialism took a new shape. As long as we control your ports and your resources, you will always be controlled by very small special interests who makes billions of dollars. They will fund your elections, so you'll get frustrated and think the politicians are in charge and this and that. And if you don't really know where the root of the problem is, we pointing the finger at each other and blaming each other. So notice, Africa took pay attention to the same time in the Bahamas in the 60s. And that was happening all over the world. All through the Caribbean you were getting, at the same time, it wasn't about bringing you out of Africa, it was about getting in there to control the resources. The same model throughout the Caribbean. And most of these individuals are very hidden. You'll just hear the politics and who's my MP and who's this and who's that. I learned this having gone to the government at that level trying to address these issues and found out that you were thinking that they were in charge, not realizing the persons who funded the elections, very hidden behind the scenes, were controlling the true wealth of the country. So I showed you where most of the resources exist. As you can see here, when you eat a Snickers or an M&M or Hershey's bar, 70+% of the world's raw material for chocolate comes out of 2 countries in Africa. You will hear about Swiss chocolate, German, French, Italian, but the resources comes from here. The same thing when you get up in the morning and you drink coffee. Let's say 1 billion persons drinks coffee this morning. You'll see again. And I showed you the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn. This is Europe, the United States. And bear in mind, those 12 countries gathered recognizing that the wealth of the world was outside of that zone. But it's he who controls the resources, not where the resources exist. As you can see, the consuming countries with coffee is totally different from the people who are working in the fields. The students here in all our school learn this misinformation. This is a map that they would learn about the size of the countries. And this is actually Africa in its true size. As you can see how small Greenland is. So Mercator projected things as if, you know, if you're north, you're up. You're south, you're beneath, you're less than. It's all foolishness because the earth is round. And so Peter's projected map projected the earth in its true sizes. These things are implication of how we see ourselves. Because if you see yourself as less than or beneath, then someone can always come in and say, you know, we're going to give you some jobs. You know, you don't really have much. but if you give me control of this, I'll work it and I'll give you some jobs. Again, you'll see most of the diamonds of the world comes from in that same zone. So as I kept researching resources from one country after the next, I found that they were all dropping within that belt, because really the goal was to find out the true root of what we were facing in the Bahamas. Again, you think of teak wood. You go on a beautiful yacht, you see all the wood on the deck, you see it all comes again. The United States up here, Europe, it's all. So just like all these beautiful mahogany trees you have in Grand Bahama, some of the world's most expensive furniture, and if you travel in Florida, going up to Palm Beach, you find that the mahogany tree can no longer grow there because the temperature starts to get too cold. So you think of a red mangrove and all of that. So I had to go to the root so you can see what is happening to us in the Bahamas. Not just to come here and talk about aragonite and sand and calcium, and as you will see, so much wealth that we have, but it's, if you're not controlling it, if it's not for the benefit of the citizens, it'll be no different than in South Africa or many other parts of the world. This is an important brief video that puts it into perspective. A lot of times we are miseducated, including myself, that, oh, you don't have nothing in the Bahamas. You know, these people are just talking foolishness about sand. So this will help you to put into perspective the true value of your sand or your calcium, which is worth more than gold or diamond.
For most of us, sand makes us think of days at the beach, sandcastles, and sunshine. And once the holidays are over, we slip back into our busy lives. But is feeling the sand between our toes or caught in our bathing suits the whole story? Does this so familiar substance play any other role in our daily lives?
Sand is what I like to call an unsung hero of our lives, because there are just endless examples of the way in which sand intersects with our daily lives, which we are really not commonly aware of.
Sand has quietly infiltrated every corner of our world. Melted and transformed into glass, it sits on every shelf. It's also the source of silicon dioxide, a mineral found in our wines, cleaning products, detergents, paper, dehydrated foods, hairspray, toothpaste, cosmetics, and an astounding variety of other products we use every day.
But it's also a source of strategic minerals such as silica, thorium, titanium, uranium. Think about your computers, your electronics. No electronic chips can be manufactured if you do not have high quality sand.
The minerals extracted from sand are at the core of our hyper-connected society. They form a basic material for microchips, without which our computers, credit cards, bank machines, cell phones, and many other devices would not exist. Sand even helps us fly. In our airplanes, the plastics, lightweight alloys of the fuselage and jet engines, even the paint and tires, are all made with sand.
It's almost become like air. The air we breathe. We don't think too much about it, but you can't live without it.
And the industry with the biggest appetite for sand? Construction. For the last 150 years, sand, mixed with cement to form concrete, has shaped the contours of our increasingly urbanized world. Because of its low cost, strength, and This gray slurry has become the dominant building material around the globe. The quantities used are astronomical. To build an average house, it takes 200 tons of sand. For a larger building like a hospital, around 3,000 tons. Each kilometer of highway devours 30,000 tons. And to build a nuclear plant, the estimate is about 12 million tons.
Global production of sand exceeds 15 billion tons per year. And that is a quantity that is so huge that it's beyond imagination. How much is 15 billion tons per year? You don't know. Because no other resource is used in such vast quantities as sand, maybe with the exception of water.
So, when you think of so many resources as you'll see about our country, you have the largest flats area in the world, you have the third largest barrier reef, and you have the largest tropical mangrove nursery system. That's in the entire Western world. So the only place in the United States that have red mangroves would be South Florida. So when you hear of poachers coming here from Dominican Republic, Honduras, Cuba, the United States, there's over 50,000 sports fishing yachts, the ones that declare that fish our waters every year. And again, it is that nursery system that is replenishing the Great Bahama Bank, the Little Bahama Bank, and so forth. You have the largest concentration of blue holes in the world, and you're talking about the deep strategic oceans, of which Grand Bahama would be. If you had to say who's going to be king or queen on the throne, it would be this particular island in terms of contributing to the global economy in the hundreds of billions of dollars from China, the US, all around the world. You are contributing to their economy right here with the resources that you have in Grand Bahama. So Grand Bahama has the second largest nursery system in the country, next to Andros, on the Great Bahama Bank on the west coast. Because of Grand Bahama lying east to west, again, I'll get back to it here. I want to So what's unique about Grand Bahama? There's so much things I can point out, but let's just say if Grand Bahama lied like Abaco, it means the prevailing winds, which is out in the southeast, you would not have the buildup of clouds that would generate the vast amount of fresh water that you have here. So think of these narrow islands that lie north and south and why they don't have the fresh water that you have in Grand Bahama, okay? So just the fact that you lie here is unique unto itself. Same thing with New Providence. Notice New Providence, the pine forest is to the west. If New Providence is lying north and south, they would not have any pine forests. And so many of these things we take for granted and don't realize that you have so much resources, but we tend to think that it's only valuable that belongs to another country, or what we were taught what should have value. So again, On the north side of Grand Bahama, the only place in the country that have more mangroves than you is the west coast of Andros. And you're replenishing not just the Little Bahama Bank, but fisheries throughout the Caribbean. So the decisions you make here on this island is not in isolation. It means I can't just sit in Andros and say, I'm going to destroy Andros, and don't think that, as my colleague will tell you in the Defense Force, when we have 14,000 commercial fishermen come from all around the country getting lobster, lean snapper, which, a lot of lean snappers got eat yesterday, right? Good Friday, we want our fish and all kinds of other. Those nursery system is what is replenishing not just the Bahamas, but the poachers are telling us that from all over the world coming here. We're gonna focus a bit on this, on the nursery system in deep ocean. But this shows you here the mangroves, whether it be Cuba, as you can see, the only place in the United States, because a lot of times people make you seem insignificant. The Bahamas is not a little country. Most of the Bahamas is beneath the shallow, it could be a few inches to 20, 30 feet. So 80+% of the country is a marine environment. But the Bahamas is not a small country. And it is not an insignificant player. But think of America with 300 million people. The only place they have mangroves is right there. But yet we think we're insignificant. So when you think of a bonefish, or all of these many, many marine resources, look at the shallow water that they have. Again, you can see Cuba has incredible wealth, but most of it is in its land, and the Cubans are always poaching in our waters. The point I'm making to you is, we're talking about the future. For me, when I do this, I'm thinking about the children, the young men, young women, your great-grandchildren. Because when we destroy this, all of these countries that are dependent on us to make the right decisions, we're impacting them as well. So for me, the root of this is Bahamians should not be suffering in this country with all of this wealth if you are asking the citizens to be good caretakers to pass this on to the next generation. So we have the purest limestone in the world, tremendous marine resources, huge potential for solar salt, not just Inagua, all those islands. If I would have everyone in Long Island collecting a check from the salt, the simple thing, put the salt water, sun evaporates it. It could be you and I could be running the, collecting it. Different companies, but we have to have the kind of vision to see our citizens as not living from dollar to dollar, struggling day to day. One of the things that bothered me is that when I went to United Arab Emirates and they got independence the same time as the Bahamas, they were struggling along because the British were pumping out all their oil, natural gas. The minute they took control of their own resources, every citizen in the country is a millionaire. But yet, they have so much more people in the Bahamas. We got 350, 400,000. They're in the millions. But yet, every citizen is a millionaire, and they don't have 1/10 the resources we have. So you have to make decisions, not just thinking about what is in the benefit of just a few, thinking about the majority overall. You think about our forests. They were cutting our forests for many years. Owens of Illinois, Andros, Grand Bahama, Abaco, and yet today, what are we doing in terms of forestry in our university, producing building materials, producing turpentine from the pine trees, wood chips, mulch, all kinds of different things. So as you can see, it is not that the Bahamas is not a rich country. You have a system where it's designed for the benefit of just a few. That's our key. So persons always knew the value of these resources. I'm going to share with you, as we go here, documents that was never put out to the public, that governments, and as Captain Kendall shared with you, that I think is important for me to stress. There is no partisan politics in what I do. I only see Bahamians, and I really don't care how people vote, right? Now, if you talk about this from a spiritual point of view, you can't have this one-sided deal. If we're going to be our brothers and sisters keeper, and I will tell you this, I've sat in the front of prime ministers. The present one will tell you, he called me and he said, Prescott, the same families fighting you are fighting me. Right? So I've learned that this issue is above politics. And we have to come together as a people if you're going to address this situation. So just look here at Arawaki. And you can see tons of it. Exported all over the world. This here is on Grand Bahama. Now, what was disturbing to me is I fished the largest road builder from Alabama. And he said to me, he said, well, Prescott, you know, I buy all my raw material from Grand Bahama. You know, in that southern accent, right? And I said, well, why? He said, well, you know, it's more profitable for my company to buy it. You got some of the purest calcium carbonate in the world. And he said, it can go so much further, right? So they're digging and years and billions of dollars. Now think about this. If you or I had a company in the U.S., and let's say Sea Island here, we made $100 million. Wouldn't we have to pay Uncle Sam $35 million to $50 million out of that? Yet we would have governments negotiating. So people are suffering here in Grand Bahama in our country when these companies clearly know that you ought to be giving back the resources, a percentage in the interest of the citizens. And so who's negotiating on our behalf when every single company doing this in the United States or Canada or Switzerland or England, we all know the tax rate. So if they make $1 billion, right, that means at least $400 million Uncle Sam is going to take right off the top. So what if $400 million was going into a sovereign wealth fund for better education, health care? Bahamians should be getting, you know, instead of a high interest rate, you could get a better deal. The young men in the row don't have to worry about going to university. We should be sending them to be engineers and this, and the list goes on. These are not things that people will try to make you think is, you know, like, oh, you're just talking foolishness. And so you cannot sit back here, and I'm speaking to you from a spiritual perspective. If you sit back and allow people who don't have humanity or a spirit of abundance to be running our affairs, is there any surprise that we are in this state? No. And I always tell people this, the amount This isn't new for me in Grand Bahama. Captain Kendall will tell you, you can go on YouTube and saw I came here Bahama Rock Town meeting, and they tried to bribe me. And I told the foreign gentleman, they said, well, why don't you come to our office and let's sit down and talk? I said, well, there is no deal cutting when it comes to the interests of Bahamians. So many persons are here. It is just that this issue is just now taking traction. I've been at this for 25 years. And if you want to use the term, only the grace of God kept me going through it, okay? And our country has sink to this level, so it now become a topic that people are discussing. When I was in the wilderness and others for years on this issue, and people just thought it wasn't necessary because we were, trotting along and we could make do and so forth, right? It's nothing new. And what really sealed it for me was the more I tried to bring the information forward and persons tried to offer me private deals, not just that one case. Politicians sending the police to arrest me, didn't do anything, just trying to quiet you down. And so I realized that this issue was not about PLP, F&M, DNA. We have to come together as a people thinking about the future of your children and your grandchildren. Again, so you think of all road that you're driving on, or cement. Calcium is used in many applications. When you take a pill, you often hear about calcium to build the bones, right? That calcium at different depth has different value. The calcium that this building is built out of, that you will fill on your foundation, that's the top. That has a totally different value from something compressed in the water over thousands of years. And so people are not going to tell you this. The female astronaut said to me, well, Prescott, the US government always knew that you had this largest nursery system. She said, but people are not going to come and tell you you have a gold mine until they're controlling it. And oftentimes you have to now do what's happening in South Africa. They're crying after 100+ years, saying we're trying to get the land back. Again, all of these, no one has a right to be extracting the resources of the country that doesn't serve to the benefit of the citizens. This isn't handouts we're talking about here. We all notice when you think a little bit about it and say, if any of these companies was doing it in any European country, Canada, or the US, they would have to give something back to the citizens. We might call it something else like income tax. So why should they come here and then make you as a Bahamian feel that you're looking for handouts because you're talking about your resources? No citizen in this country should be suffering. This isn't a pie in the sky, and I've addressed this with the governments, and none of them could challenge this information. Because oftentimes when it comes from us, it's never accepted as being credible. So you better have your facts together. And I've researched it all over the world, from Guatemala to Argentina to the Congos to Australia. Now you hear a lot about oil. The Bahamas have resources deep here. I mean, Cuba is negotiating with China and other countries to drill in the deep water. But let's look 50 years. Grand Bahama has been contributing hundreds of billions of dollars to global economies on this issue of oil. If you looked at the CIA website, you will see the #1 exporter from this island has been oil for many years. So it is not just to say you're going to drill for oil. If it's not to the benefit of the citizens, what does it matter? You're talking about changing a system that our citizens would not be suffering the way they are today. So you see all the tankers come in. There's some volume here. Can I have a little bit more volume, please?
Plastic packaging alone uses 1 pint. China needs 250 million gallons of crude oil per year just to
Notice they said the U.S. consumed 800 million gallons of crude oil a day.
produce ladies' tights. Current global consumption is 3.5 billion gallons per day and increasing. 85% of all crude oil is transported by sea. It is transported over the oceans by supertankers in the VLCC class, very large crude carriers. Tons and is 35 feet in diameter. The rudder blade has the surface of a 5-room apartment. The tanker has a capacity of 95 million gallons of crude oil. That is the equivalent to 4.5 million bathtubs, which, if they were lined up, would be 5,600 miles long. That's the distance from Texas to Dortmund, Germany. The vessel draws 75 feet of water. 2/3 of the ship is underwater when it's fully loaded.
The main thing I wanted to show you was with the depth of that vessel and why Grand Bahama is so important, not just to this country, but the global economy. So let's think of Andros, where I'm from. You got 140 miles reef, the 3rd largest in the world, that runs on the eastern. So Andros do not have the strategic advantage of Grand Bahama. So why are all these ships targeting you? And when they come to our leaders, they make you seem like they're doing you a favor. You reside in one of the most strategic shipping lanes in the world, the northeast, northwest Providence Channel that cuts and goes into the Gulf. And so if you are a super tanker that has 3 million barrels, you can see they don't have the ability to take them probably within 70 miles. So they would have to put it on the smaller and take it into the refinery. So you think of the significance of Grand Bahama for the last 30, 40, 50 years, allowing much more crude oil to be able to come here go into storage tanks, and then be sold all over because of your strategic ocean that comes close to the land. This resource alone, the Bahamas should not have any national debt. So one of the guests I fished, he said, Prescott, if I'm spending $100 million to fill my tanker, do you think I have a problem with paying your government $1 a barrel to bring it there? And yet, all of these things are negotiated as if you have no resource. They're coming to do you a favor. They're going to give you a few jobs. And again, people are not going to tell you the significance of why everyone is targeting Grand Bahama. So let's look at a country that has the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, Norway. And we know how their citizens live. You're contributing to their sovereign wealth fund in billions, but what do you get out of it? So if Norway, if they can bring 3 million barrels because of the deep ocean, and you can see the pipes there, right? And then they take that from there into refineries into Houston, all the way up to New Jersey. If Grand Bahama didn't have this strategic deep ocean, that means the Norwegians would have to make 6 trips over in smaller tankers. But at the end of the day, nobody takes into consideration, this one resource that Grand Bahama alone, forget calcium, aragonite, mangroves, that is contributing to China, the United States, all of these European countries. That's why everybody targets you here on Grand Bahama. And so, whether they're talking about a Baco or talking about the next oil thing, this is the main reason here. Not just that deep ocean that comes in close, but where the ocean is located. We're talking about, this is not international waters. Every Bahamian pilot should not have to fight like they did to be able to earn a living in their own country. But you look back at the same pattern, people are not going to tell you you're sitting on a gold mine until they're controlling it. It's where this deep ocean is located. So you have the government of China benefiting, the United States, all of these countries around the world. We're not talking about 10 or 20 billion dollars. And so what if you just got $1 for every barrel of crude oil that comes into your internal ocean, that went into the sovereign wealth fund for the citizens of the country? At the end of the day, no one would have an issue, but if people realize that you don't know what you have, and this one wants to cut a deal on the side, the next one is just looking out for themselves, that's what you end up with, what we're facing today. So, I have to stress this. Every island in this country, you've been blessed with a unique advantage. Andros do not have this strategic advantage. The Chinese are aware of it, that's why they're here. The Americans, many countries around the world. Before I was born, they were taking advantage of Grand Bahama and our country. Again, you can see the pipes that run out to the ships. I can tell you, gentlemen, this is nothing short of of criminal or treason. You know, I used to say that it was that people didn't know until I tried for many years to bring this information to the governments. And that's why I say to you that the issue was not about partisan politics. Because every time I went to them, they wanted to find out how do I vote? You know, can I help this crew but leave the next? And I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in you helping all Bahamians, not some. Didn't matter whether they were black, white, tall, short, all Bahamians at the end of the day. This is an important one to bring to your attention. It took us 24 years to get legislation passed for the fly fishing industry. Why did it take 24 years? I went through 7 ministers of tourism. Not one of them supported it. The 8th minister of tourism still doesn't support it because we presented to the government about Bahamians being owners in our #1 industry. There were 2 ministers who stood up and fought in the interest of Bahamian. One was Pierre DePuche. Notice, one political party. Then there was Alfred Gray. I would know because being president, and not many persons are, I guess some of relatives say, Prescott, you're just spending everything you have doing this. 99% national service. So I have personal experience of knowing who are really being sincere about Bahamians and the ones who are talking about it. So the government changes in May. Captain Kendall and I on the board, 2 different boards. The first thing the special interests try to do is pressure the government to repeal the legislation. Why would they want to repeal it? Because again, you have the #1 resource on the face of the earth. We're not talking about a few $1 billion. The issue was much bigger than fly fishing, except it had to get to this point in the country where people are now talking about resources, because we were out there in the wilderness talking about fly fishing, and people were saying, that has no concern for me, that's fishing. You know, that's a separate matter. Whereas it wasn't, it was about building an industry from your marine resources, land-based, that your children and great-grandchildren can benefit from. So let's say the young man here, he's an artist, like Guy Harvey, he paints the blue marlin, and that goes, he gets trademarked, and that goes on to the coffee cups, the t-shirts, the hats. He does the coloring books. You see what I'm going here? Your daughter, so it's an industry. So you have all of these companies that are raping the resources of this country. Whether it be the fly line manufacturer, the rods, the reels, Oakley who makes the polarized sunglasses, all of these things are connected to this resource. So you have our neighbor spending $42 billion on sports fishing, yet we have the largest resource in the world, and we brag about $8 to $10 billion economy, because we're following a model that really only serves the interests of a few, to sell the real estate, to give you a few jobs, and then you wonder why more and more Bahamians become more and more frustrated. So you look at other countries, who are our competitors? This is all the flats they have in America with a bonefish on it. So you have more flats on Grand Bahama than most of these countries around the world put together. This is Mexico. Oftentimes we get scared when we hear of 100 million people, but you should look at the resources that they have compared to the resources that you have. Those are the flats in Mexico. That's Belize, Honduras, Cuba. Now, you know, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could see the position of the Bahamas. You see that dark area there? That's all turtle grass. No place in the Caribbean have the amount that you have. Look at the exumas. So you're not just having nursery system of mangroves, but you have them in other areas as well. You know, I know this information can be overloaded, but I want us to look at this in a positive way, that our Creator allows you, you know, it's not by accident we're sitting in this room. You know, it's not by accident. And so, to me, I feel a privilege, like I said, to be here, to present, and so we learn from each other that you actually could do something to change the situation that we are faced with. How many of you knew that was a Cubera snapper? Yeah, well, that comes from a freshwater lake in Andros. That's not in the open sea. So we have over 33 lakes in Andros, 3 miles to 9 miles. The point I'm making is we haven't scratched the surface of this industry. Okay? That's one of my brothers and another professional guy there. That's a freshwater lake. How many of you knew that we have 2 huge rivers in the Bahamas on the west coast of Andros? River Goose and River Lees. I know some of you are thinking baked bonefish, but let's stay focused here now. And that's one of the most sought after fish on the flats, the permit. Right? Okay. Guatemala, entire fly fishing industry is in the ocean. So when you think of what you have around here, whether you're in Long Island, Crooked Island, Exuma, the potential is unbelievable, really. And as I share with you, I presented information like this, as you will see, very in-depth presentations and shared information with the governments, and you find that people try to bury it under the carpet because of different interests who are thinking selfishly instead of abundance. You're in the right environment where I can say this. One of my guests, who's a friend of mine from Seattle, he said, Prescott, there's only 2 kinds of human beings in the world. He said, you either have a spirit of abundance or one of scarcity. So we're speaking, brothers, from a spiritual point of view. Our Creator is about abundance, right? So at the end of the day, with all this talk about how we want to serve God and we want to serve each other, there should not be any scarcity or selfishness or me or I. We should be thinking about we and helping each other. So that's how I measure human beings, not just the people who talk about it is, do you have a spirit of abundance or do you have it of scarcity? Because our Creator wants nothing to do with scarcity. It means that there is enough or there for everyone. I might be the one doing the stone crabs. C. Allen might be providing the lean snapper. You might be providing the hogfish. You might be growing the tomatoes, the onions. I have no reason to be jealous of you because there's enough out there for everybody to do. Amen. And if I put my hog snapper with your fresh tomatoes, you know we got some good steamed fish coming up there, right? So everybody has a role to play. I know we got a lot of questions, but this I always like to think of. You think of, here is our country. You are to cherish these natural wonders, cherish the natural resources, cherish the history and romance as a sacred heritage for your children and your children's children. Do not let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its beauty, its riches, or its romance. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes, I can wait for a question.
But before you ask the question, I want to share something new that is also historic, us being here. You see this document, and I wanted the country to see this. I tried for a very long time to get this document. This is being held from the public. This here shows you geologists came from Cuba. This will be made available to you and the country. The geologists came from Cuba and they went and looked at 8 sites around the country. And as rich as you thought the Bahamas is, it's 1,000 times richer. And you figure that this information should be made available to the public, right? Showing you all the mining interests that companies want to go down and make Guantanamo and mine, North Andros, east end of Grand Bahama. So there's interest in your country that knows about this. This is the Gamma report, okay? First time being shown to the public because everyone was trying to hide this information from you. Okay? And so this will be made available to you and all of the Bahamian citizens because no governments, notice I'm not talking politics, have a right to know that a country have this kind of wealth and keep its citizens in the dark because just a few persons want to make billions of dollars to our detriment.
Let us just, this is question and answer time. And what we're going to do is we have a very short period. I'm sure Mr. Prescott will be available after the session is over. And so those persons who have questions, sure, I'm being directed to have everybody come this side so we can be in the camera. All right, so those persons who have questions, we want your questions, please, to be very brief because there's a lot of persons in here, I'm sure, who have questions they want to ask. I'm going to hold the mic and let you ask your question.
My voice is good enough without the mic.
There we go.
Prescott, do you know me?
You look like you're standing tree.
No, but hang on to that just for a second.
Yes.
Just for a second. Because a lot of the things that you're doing here today, I might have been able to do.
Can't hear you.
Give the mic.
I said a lot of the things that you are doing here today, I might have been able to do.
Which I'm sure.
My business is communications.
Yes, sir.
And I know that we have the telco and the cable companies, Smooth City, and even the radio station that says it's covered the entire Bahamas. They don't. My wife takes me into rural areas and places that cannot get services from the giants. And your property in South Africa is one of them. I came to you and I did your satellite system that allows you to get your internet.
Yes, I started out with at least 2 or 3 of them. Now
I'm Alan Ingram.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Ingram, you have a question? Please.
There are many places like this. What you said and what you indicated here in the riches of the Bahamas, and you said 1,000 times richer than what you can believe. But I'm saying to you that what I'm going to give you today is more than double what you already found. We are strategically placed in the Bahamas where we are. I need to move over here for a second, just to show you where we are. This is the Bahamas here. I'm saying to you that in telecommunications and electronics today, that God has strategically placed the Bahamas where it is right now. And I'm going to show you down here is all of South America, all of the Caribbean islands, South America here, all of the Caribbean islands, for them to get their communications to the U.S. They have to come through the Bahamas. And I'm telling you that the fiber optic and communication lanes that pass through here is right now will double, more than double what you found already. So I know that God has blessed me to be here today, and I don't understand why you as a fisherman pick a day like today, the 31st of March, which is the best fishing day so far for the year. You know that because it's a full moon tonight. You know, today's the best fishing day. And I said, why in the world does Prescott pick this day? And I promised to be out today. But I thought it's so important to be here than to be out there in the water. And what I picked up now, we have to continue. I don't want to take time because other people may have questions. But I'm saying to you that we had an area place where there was a monopoly in communications. Well, we've had other companies come in, and now we figure the monopoly is gone. But because you say there are special interest groups, I'm saying to you today that the monopoly is bigger than it ever was before. Because it now all belongs to one person, and not because they want to give us cell phone. Cell phones, as you have it, brings 1/16 of the earnings from telecommunication companies. You didn't hear what I said. We think cell phones are the greatest thing for them. I'm saying to you that what happens here, and what happened over in Australia, Australia 9 years ago was making $92 million for traffic that goes through it. The Bahamas has 5 times the traffic of Australia.
Don't move yet. Let me just say something right there. Yeah, go on. He and I are into telecommunications, and he has a certain level, and I've done it for years. I want to let you know, the fourth industrial revolution, the young people look at it, your parents look at it. The fourth industrial revolution is the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of mankind, interconnectivity. The Bahamas is one of the most important countries in the world today for the fourth industrial revolution. You know how, you see what has happened to Facebook? In Facebook, I'm going to end this, but in Facebook alone, the Bahamas is the only place in the world today that you can have data privacy from a constitutional level for everything in the world as you know it, the things you can't see. And we must move to protect it for the young people in our room. And that's a whole different conversation that we will have. Because we're talking about resources. Your geopolitical location is worth not billions, trillions of dollars.
Yes. Great. And I remember he did set up, he put Starboard Big Lodge on the map when there was no
communication. Yeah. The local companies couldn't do it. Yeah. And I'm still doing it today, by the way. That's what I still do.
Thank you.
I just needed the name of the report.
You'll get it. You'll get it. It's called Gamma. This is the university in Cuba here, and those geologists came. Those geologists came in and did. They came right in their backyard. It's all there. I'll email the information. Okay. The idea is not to keep things from the citizens, but you have to know.
Pascal.
Good question.
You gave a lot of information and what has not been happening. You referenced South Africa and what the party down there has been trying to do, where they've been repossessing the land without compensation from the white owners and redistributing it to the locals with the option of white people coming back in and leasing the land, and their premise has been it was taken against their will or whatever. So what plan should we have as Bahamians to protect, take advantage of some of the practical stuff that we can do? Because we see what's going on. We see the sickness, but what's the actual remedy, practically, realistically?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And don't let people paint that as just a black or white issue in South Africa, because you normally get media giving you a lot of twist to it. The issue is much more, the land is where all the minerals, so you have where the platinum, diamond, gold, all of those minerals beneath the ground. And of course, most of the arable land is like that. So it's not just an issue where they're taking it from a certain group to give to the other. They realize that the future, even many of the whites in South Africa realize that in order for there to be any stability, they have to address that issue because of the injustice of such imbalance, the same kind of imbalance that we have within our country where we just say we have this model that serves the interest for a few persons that have billions of dollars, and the majority have a job, and then our country is more and more being auctioned off. So here is a very clear solution to it. As Kendall pointed out to you, there's been 25 years journey to this. So it wasn't just out there talking about resources. We first started with the Bahamas Sports Fishing Conservation Association, the Fly Fishing Industry Association to get the legislation. And I'm now on the board of the Bahamas Natural Resources Foundation. And the foundation is about really giving the power to Bahamians, not just you joining it. They set the membership fee for $1, and the reason why it's for $1 is so that no one in Baintown or Montel Heights would have an excuse. It's not a corrupted structure. Captain Kendall Williamson is one of the founders as well. But it was designed as we navigated our way through that we were not cutting any deals, not taking any money that cost you to compromise. And it's about truly giving the power to the people. The goal of the foundation is very clear, so that you collectively come together, address to the government that you have a sovereign wealth fund for all the citizens. I mean, I'm talking about monies in the consolidated fund, because as he pointed out, we haven't scratched the surface of this. We can go on and on. If I show you just one presentation to the cabinet, that was 4.5 hours. So at least we got started with it. But the goals of the foundation are very clear. I would encourage you to join it, get your children to join, because it is about addressing to the government to put in a sovereign wealth fund, to put in a Ministry of Natural Resources, and all of the things that you're pointing out is all a part of that, so that you have Bahamians coming together, because we know what our problems are and how to solve it, but unless you come together beyond politics, you're never going to address this issue. Notice what I said. I always say to people, vote as you wish. This issue about your resources, it's about that. Because let's say if the water table is being poisoned and we're all drinking it, we're all infected. Okay? And so that's one of the things I would encourage you. Like you talk about the fiber optics, communication, think about our airspace. We do not control our airspace. So if you look at how much hundreds of millions the U.S. collect from planes flying through here, 6,000 feet within the Bahamas is controlled by the U.S. It's no other country in the Caribbean, they're controlling their airspace. So these are all things that can contribute to the benefit of all the citizens. And as I pointed out to you, just your deep ocean alone at Grand Bahama and controlling our airspace, the Bahamas should have no national debt. Bahamians should not be losing their homes. And so anyone who tries to make you think there's just a pie in the sky, that's because they don't see you as deserving. So we have to look at our citizens. This isn't just about you not worrying about how you're going to feed your children or educate them. At the end of the day, it's rather the mindset is, do you see the citizens as deserving? And we talk about abundance and scarcity, and so we should focus on the ones who see you as deserving and not the greedy few who sees it the opposite. Thank you.
Great. We have 3 more questions, and then we'll cut off the question and answer session. So,
Well, I can ask my question, and the scriptures right, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And what you have given here is very important. My thing about it is moving forward. This is so much, I think, the entire Freeport need to know about this information. So what, from you, what do you expect from us, or what can we do to speed up the process of getting the information out there? That's my concern right now.
This is a situation that that you can change very quickly. Like I say, you have the Bahamas Natural Resources Foundation, and I can tell you, while I sit on the board, there's Dana Munnings, who's the president, Larry Boleg, the vice president, but don't look at some board structure. Anything that I'm a part of, I think about empowering Bahamians. It was designed as your foundation. You are to find your dollar and join it and take control over it, because the goals are very clear. When we write the government on behalf of the Bahamian citizens, when you come together, 50, 100,000, no government can deny you what is rightfully yours. It is, and don't, see, again, if the three prime ministers, and even Sir Lyndon was sitting here, because I've dealt with this situation and navigated my way through it, none of them can deny that I'm telling you, this issue is above. Captain Kendall could tell you, when we were fighting that legislation just the other day, I had cabinet ministers calling me and saying, Prescott, we need your help because the pressure is coming from on high. And who is the pressure coming from? Special interests who want to sell an island for 50 million, 100 million. They're not thinking about these young men here. So are we going to let them go to Fox Hill because we're going to just blame the politicians? This issue is above them. Oftentimes I tell people, by the time your government is elected, you must think about who's writing the checks for the election. And they're very hidden behind the scenes. And so this isn't unique to the Bahamas. Coming from the Defense Force, I saw many of my Haitian brothers, sisters die out there. I was on the boat in Exuma, and I personally pulled 38 bodies out of the boat. And so I know why people are leaving those countries, even though they got gold, and they got granite, and they got the wealth, they have the same few interests. And when I talk to my brothers in South Africa, in Botswana, it's the same. It's he who controls your resources, controls your economy. And that impacts every one of you spiritually, because, and I said to the leader, Pastor, if the members are being jealous of each other, instead of trying to help each other, that hinders you from serving the way you ought to be serving. So this is an issue that needs to be led by men who say, well, you know what? I'm putting God first in my life. Then you should not be afraid to stand up for what is right, because that's the example these young men will see. If they see us being afraid, that's the lesson that they're going to learn at the end of the day. Thank you.
Come on, to see you again. You really answered my question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Good morning, Captain Prescott. A most informative and impressive presentation. Here's a simple question. Apart from special interest groups, what are reasons over the years did our governments, and I mean plural, what reasons did they give you for not following through on your recommendations and your research?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we have to be prepared to ask the tough ones. I sat in the front of the former Prime Minister, just the two of us. You find that when people, sometimes these families try to get you to compromise when you're not even realizing it, okay? And so, many of our leaders, they were compromised. We have to just tell the truth the way it is, okay? And let me give you an example. For example, Grand Bahama was being mined way before I was born. And oftentimes you sit here and you think it's the Port Authority. The Port Authority was never in control of Grand Bahama. Those families in Nassau always controlled Grand Bahama. And this is how it happened. If you go back to the Port Authority, you say, well, who was the attorney for the port? It was the Stafford Sands. Who got the interest to mine the canals? Who was the largest road builder in the country? Who were the ones mining Ocean Key? And so what we got is political independence, and we must come together as a people if we're going to get economic independence. These decisions were made, and so we get we elect prime ministers, and then we go through budgetary periods, and oftentimes we're fighting as who's going to get the bus contract, who's going to build the school. That's a different issue. That's government borrowing funds. You know, you'll hear about the 700 million, the billion, right? And we get into that. A very crafty distraction. So I have to study it all over the world to realize that the issue is above that. And so when you look at the prime ministers, the question he asks, and you say, well, the mining of Grand Bahama, Martin Marietta, Freeport aggregates, those families who control these companies are right in Nassau, but they're very crafty. This isn't just, I don't want to just single it out to the Bahamas, because I have to go all over the world to see it's the same model. What they do is they bring in a global strategic partner up front, so you don't even know who they are. And this is unique. And so what you say is, oh, it's the Port Authority. It's Martin Marietta, right? Those deals are structured, and you would never know that Prescott Smith and Sea Island, we're the ones who are trafficking all of the, and I'll use something negative, we're the biggest traffickers of heroin. But you know when you'll see Sea Island and I, we're going to the school and we're giving out computers. We're handing out candies to the children, right? And you don't know what we do behind the scenes. It's very simple. Our Creator has put you in charge to be good caretakers and good stewards. Okay? You're asking for something that someone might make you feel that you're not entitled to. The resources are for the benefit of the citizens, not just a few. It is just that as a young country now, we have to take this final step in our journey, realizing that you would not be leaving much for your children if you don't take this stand. And so we got our College of the Bahamas, university, national insurance, but we never had economic independence at the end of the day. And oftentimes we kept looking for persons to do it, when really it is you. This is historic, you being in this room. You can join the foundation and you can make history and say, my children knew that I was there and I made a difference. Or we could sit back and say, the politician ought to do it. Really, I say the responsibility rests with each and every one of us in this room at the end of the day. And so when I saw that the prime ministers, both of them, and I saw these documents, they were compromised. And I can say this very openly, because nobody signs mining permits other than the prime ministers. And so if you sign and you didn't say that this is for the country, this is for the Sovereign Wealth Fund, that means at the end of the day that somebody is offering you something on the side, like they offered me, and I just didn't take it. So when you track who's got the signed mining permit, the permit for the calcium, the permit for the aragonite, nobody else signs them but the prime ministers of the Bahamas.
This will be the final question for this particular segment. I'm sure Captain Prescott will be available to answer any other questions after this session is over. So after this question, they will be turning the mic back over to the moderator.
Good morning. I just want to find out, do you have a website for the foundation, and can you sign up today?
Yes, you can. I'll leave you all of the information, but the foundation is bahamasnaturalresources.org. And I want to be very clear with you with this here, because I can tell you from sitting on the board, I am adamant about Bahamians having full control in their country. This foundation is not about you just being some token member. And so it cannot work. There are many of you who have children who have expertise and talents that it needs, and that's how it will be. And you must also guard it. So that what if I was someone who was selling you out? So it isn't just Captain Kendall Williamson, because I can tell you from dealing with him over the years, he has never once sat with me and had a conversation about selling Bahamians out. That's how we became friends, because I am very funny with that. I don't care if you are my wife or my brother or sister, I listen for those things. Are you thinking about abundance or you're thinking about self-interest? And so I would join the foundation. It's bahamasnaturalresources.org. It's the website. And but you know, start your or put you in touch with the president, the vice president, and while you may have an initial board structure, the goal is to, from Inagua to Grand Bahama, and address these concerns once and for all, so that we can have a better Bahamas. And this isn't a pie in the sky. You're talking about changes that can happen quicker than most people can imagine once you come together. You see? So I even brought membership forms. I'll leave them with you. You can form your own group because again, I'm only on the board, and Grand Bahama is intended to have the similar structure, not just you have this autonomous grouping in Nassau, that the way these structures normally work. Because this is about when, for example, when you get the sovereign wealth fund, you can't just sit back and say the money goes into the public treasury. You have to decide what should it be used for: education, healthcare, and the right structures. And you're talking about very powerful global interests. This isn't just a few families in Nassau. These are multinational. They are global interests when it comes to resources, who would lobby and don't mind spending a few $1 million to make sure that the status quo remains. You see? So when you look at one mining company here, they have hundreds of mining operations. Most Bahamians don't know that. Even though the Bahamians might be in control, they partner with them. So the calcium is used for metal production. It builds F-16 fighter jets, destroyers, all of that. And as you can see, there are many uses when that product leaves Grand Bahama at the end of the day. But again, you will have all of this information. I think that's the power, information, knowing what's in your country, get it in the hands of your children, and let's leave them a better future at the end of the day.
Thank you. There's something of interest that they may know what to expect. I want to say quite a number of years ago,